Do I need to eliminate alcohol if I want to lose weight? Short answer, no. Long answer is it depends. Welcome to the show where we help you make smart nutrition simple. If you want proven nutrition strategies to help you build a better body and create the energy to show up for your family without overly restrictive and unrealistic dieting, then you're in the right place. Make sure to subscribe and enjoy this episode. What is going on, my friends? Welcome back to another episode of the Smart Nutrition Made Simple show. Today we are doing another amazing Q&A episode. Now, if you don't know me, I'm your host, Ben Brown, owner and head coach here at Body Systems. We're an online nutrition and strength training company, and we help you change your belief system around what it means to be healthy. Now, my goal here with this podcast is to provide the most straightforward, practical, and strategically simple fitness, nutrition, lifestyle, and fat loss resources possible so that you can get lean, so that you can get strong, so that you can get healthy, and so that you can lead by example for your family and for your future. And we do that through our evidence-based content as well as my over now 20 years of experience working with clients just like you in practice every single day. Now, in today's episode, I'm tackling one of the most common questions that we get. Do I need to eliminate alcohol to lose weight? The short answer is no. However, the long answer, as with everything, is a bit more complex. So in this conversation, I'm going to dive into the impact of alcohol on fat loss. We're going to talk about how it influences your behavior, how it influences your sleep, and what you need to consider if you want to make progress without cutting it out completely. Plus, I'm going to break down what metabolic adaptation really is and whether it is the reason why you're struggling to lose weight. So, without further ado, let's jump in. I hope you guys enjoy. So the question is, do I need to eliminate alcohol if I want to lose weight? Short answer, no. Long answer is it depends. And the reality with alcohol is that there are very few benefits to alcohol intake, especially as it pertains to weight loss. And so I think at the end of the day, that's the most powerful and valid answer that I can give is if you truly care about losing body fat, of getting to a certain weight, of improving your body composition, of improving your long-term health, and doing it in the fastest, most efficient, most effective way without spinning your wheels, then you will strongly, strongly consider eliminating alcohol. Now, that's fairly black and white, which I understand. And so I'll explain a little bit more why that is my opinion. But what we see time and time again, anecdotally in our business, working with clients every single day over the past close to 20 years now, is alcohol typically is the biggest limiting factor that gets in the way of our ability to lose weight. And the reasons for that are not necessarily the alcohol itself. Like it's not the chemical makeup of alcohol and that it necessarily blocks fat loss, but it's all of the associated behaviors that come from our alcohol consumption. And so typically, now to be fair, alcohol in and of itself is very calorically dense. There's 7 calories per gram in alcohol. Protein and carbs are 4 calories per gram, right? So it's almost double protein and carbs per gram, and fat is 9 calories per gram. So it's not far off from fat. And it's very, very easy to consume a tremendous amount of calories from alcohol, which for most people is problematic. A light beer is 100 calories. A darker IPA is going to be 150 to 200 calories. depending on the size of the drink, depending what it's mixed with. So simply from a calorie standpoint, and we all know, like, if you ever want to be depressed, put your wine glass on a scale and look at what a 5-ounce pour is, which, by the way, is a glass of wine. And what you'll realize is you've probably been consuming significantly more than 1 glass or 2 glasses. And the calories that contribute there are what we see time and again that add up to just a considerable amount of calories. So at the end of the day, like, that's super important to acknowledge. But beyond that is, what are the behaviors that are associated with alcohol intake? Usually overeating. And so if people are drinking, usually they're eating more food. They're usually not tracking those foods. It's usually later at night. It's going to impact sleep quality. And the role of alcohol and the relationship to alcohol and sleep is not a good one. So alcohol will suppress all of our sleep hormones. It will create blood sugar instability. So we won't get restful sleep. We've talked about the role of sleep in fat loss and hormone fluctuations. And so we're reinforcing this really vicious cycle with poor sleep patterns, then poor sleep contributing to insulin resistance, to hunger, to cravings, to low energy. And it perpetuates this vicious cycle. So it doesn't mean that you can't enjoy a glass of wine or a beer or a couple on a weekend and still make great progress. You can, and we have clients who do. But it's imperative that you acknowledge the role that alcohol can play in kind of limiting our ability to lose body fat because of all of these factors. And then, the one other consideration is, metabolically speaking, the role that alcohol plays is one in terms of alcohol is a toxin. At least, and I don't love that word, but alcohol is perceived as a toxin in the body. And what happens when we consume alcohol is it's preferentially metabolized, meaning the body will do everything it can. It identifies it as a toxin, something we need to get rid of as quickly as possible. And so that's the term preferentially metabolized. It wants to get it, process it, get it out as quickly as possible. And so when we say preferentially metabolized, what that means in the context of our body and of the food that we're consuming is basically, if we're consuming other foods, other carbohydrates, other fats, other proteins at the same time, which most of us will eat and drink at the same time. But let's say we're eating, a cheeseburger and fries and a glass of wine or a beer or something. The body's going to identify the alcohol, and it's going to want to get that alcohol out first. And so all of the carbs and all of the fat that's being processed from the food has a lot higher likelihood to get converted into fat as opposed to being utilized as fuel, because the body's expending its resources, breaking down, absorbing, and assimilating, and eliminating the alcohol molecules, if you will. So that's another really important consideration, is it will, to some small degree, literally block fat loss. But more importantly, in my opinion, is simply the behaviors that happen when we drink alcohol. So if you're someone who drinks more on the weekends, in the evenings, poor sleep quality, poor food choices, the calories add up. And at the end of the day, that's usually the biggest obstacle with alcohol and fat loss. So the question is what is metabolic adaptation? And is metabolic adaptation the reason why some people can't lose weight? And this is an interesting one, because what we know with the metabolism really across the board, and it's pretty non-negotiable at this point, is there's for most people, there's really nothing wrong with your metabolism. The metabolism does what it's supposed to do in terms of blood sugar regulation and thyroid function and body temperature management and respiration and all of those things. And the metabolism or our metabolic function is a big buzzword right now, especially as it pertains to fat loss. And every woman thinks that something's wrong with their metabolism, especially as they get older. And the cool part is, and the good news is, there's nothing wrong with your metabolism. Like I said, it's doing exactly what it's supposed to do. If you undereat for a considerable period of time, which most people don't, by the way, but if you are someone who tends to undereat, your metabolism is going to slow to some degree. If you lose a lot of weight, your metabolism is going to slow down because you don't have as much mass and you don't need to burn as many calories at rest to support metabolic function. You don't have as much tissue to support. If you eat more food over acute periods of time, over short periods of time, interestingly, a lot of times your metabolism can actually speed up to some degree to offset the extra caloric intake, which is really pretty cool. So the thing that we see with metabolic adaptation, and another term that I'll use is metabolic compensation, is that our body does a remarkable job keeping things in homeostasis, which is normal, right? Our body does a really good job of maintaining normal blood sugar levels, maintaining temperature, maintaining respiration, right? Basically keeping us alive. And so a lot of the things that we do that we think are going to be able to drive weight loss, like exercise is a good example of areas where we see metabolic adaptation at play, to the degree that what we know from the research is, in theory, if I were to go and start running, right? My goal is to lose 5 pounds or 10 pounds. And so it's very logical for me to, well, I know I need to exercise. I'll go start running, and I'll run for 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week. And maybe every time I run, I did the little calculation and it's going to burn 500 calories. If I do that 5 days a week, that would be 2,500 calories. That would be 2/3 of a pound of body fat. Well, what happens is that's actually not how the metabolism works. And we can't look at kind of this calorie intake, calorie output scenario as equivalent. And so while on paper that might expend 500 calories, what actually happens is we get back from the run and we're terribly lethargic for the rest of the day, right? So we end up sitting around for the rest of the day. We're exhausted because we just started running. We're not used to running. We burned a ton of calories. So we just sit around, right? And normally I'm a very active person. I walk around, I do walks with the dog. Maybe I just decide I'm going to just chill. And so that's an area of adaptation where my body and my brain are signaling the muscles of like, hey, dipshit, you just burned a lot of calories. We care most about survival. And based on the number of calories that you're taking in, it's probably not a good idea to continue expending a tremendous amount of calories. So we just chill, right? And we see this actually quite a lot in the literature with hunter-gatherer tribes. And while they might expend a tremendous amount of calories throughout the day, they also kind of just sit around quite a lot more than you would think. And this is the metabolism at play. Now, not only would we necessarily just sit around, but my brain also might say, hey, man, you just burned a ton of calories. We need to replace those calories, right? Especially if we're doing this frequently. So I might get really hungry. And I'm sure we've all experienced this, of where right? You go do an exercise class, or you go do a big hike, and you get home and you're just like ravenous for the rest of the day. This is metabolic adaptation at play. It's the hormones and signals that the brain is sending to the stomach and vice versa to be like, yo, we need to replace all of these calories that we just burned. So you're going to be hungrier. You're going to even just rationalize eating more food because you quote unquote earned it, which a lot of people do, right? To the degree that we end up making up for those calories in a myriad of ways through the dysregulation of leptin and ghrelin, our hunger and our satiety hormones. And so, this is what we see over the short term. And then even over the long term, we see a dysregulation in hormones like estrogen, like testosterone, of these compensatory mechanisms at play. And in other words, it's the body doing everything it can to keep us right where we are. So despite the fact that you're burning more calories, you're eating more calories and or you're moving less. And so that's a huge reason why exercise is not a good weight loss tool. It's also another very good reason why your metabolism is doing exactly what it's supposed to do, keep you alive and maintain this kind of proverbial set point of being comfortable where you are and normalized, of maintaining that homeostasis right there. And so that's why we need to look at the ways in which we are dieting and exercising. It's not about always eating less or starving yourself or killing yourself in the gym, but being very strategic around spending short periods of dieting coupled with periods of refeeding and eating at maintenance to make sure that we don't create too much adaptation and create too many behavioral compensatory patterns of ending up overeating or trying to rely on willpower or discipline, right? Because we know that doesn't work. And the same thing from an exercise standpoint is the harder you exercise, the longer you exercise, the more quote unquote efficient your body becomes. And we don't want the body to be efficient. We want it to be like the Hummer of, just burning through gasoline, not the Prius. And so that's where strength training is super important because it's smaller amounts of imposed stress that are easy for the body to adapt to. It doesn't create this huge caloric expenditure, and yet a much more potent kind of hormonal stimulus that drives muscle mass maintenance and strength changes. Because again, training is not about burning calories. It's about contributing to lean muscle tissue, lean muscle maintenance, and the hormonal implications of those. And so when we can be really smart about the process, then we're kind of just we're navigating those two toggles, if you will, those two levers around periods of dieting, periods of maintenance, periods of surplus, periods of more aggressive exercise. We might slowly, progressively ramp up cardio, but not in extremely intense ways until end stages, if and only if we need to drive more fat loss. But for most people, it means eating more food than they think they're allowed to and exercising less than they think they need to, but doing it more consistently than anyone's willing to do it. Well, there you have it. That's it for this episode of the Smart Nutrition Made Simple show. If you have questions that you'd like us to tackle in an upcoming episode, then we can't wait to hear from you. So you can submit your questions directly by just messaging us on our social media. That's at Body Systems Coaching. Or you can just message me personally, ben@bodysystems.com. Appreciate you guys listening, and I will catch you in the next episode. Thank you so much for listening. And if you found this content valuable, here are 4 ways I can help you in your nutrition journey for free. 1. Grab a free copy of my Fat Loss Fix Guide at fatlossfixguide.com. 2. Join my free group at smartnutritionmadesimple.com. 3. Subscribe to my YouTube channel at smartnutritionmadesimpletv.com. 4. Leave a 5-star rating and positive review so that we can gain access to more nutrition experts ready to share their knowledge with you and ultimately help more people make smart nutrition simple.